All right. Well, good evening, everybody. We are in the heat of session here in Minnesota, and I haven't done one of these in a while. And I decided it is way past time because the craziness of the Capitol cannot be overstated. And it it begs the question: are Democrats pedophiles? And I know a lot of you are already jumping on that and saying absolutely they are. And you can call me late to the party on this, but um, I've seen the comments. Obviously, Joe Biden has a lot of issues, but that's such a broad brush, quite honestly. So I've been very reluctant to go down this path and saying this whole party is full of pedophiles. But based on what has happened to the Capitol this week, I don't know how you deny it. Like the evidence is mounting that these people have some sick and twisted ideas around what children should be exposed to. So that's what I'm going to dive into today. And then I got a little bit of a clown show that I need to show everybody at the end of this thing. So, Democrats, are they pedophiles? Are they not? I would say Democrat politicians are largely pedophiles in Minnesota. And I'm going to get into why I've come to this conclusion. And again, I'm sure this conclusion is a little late for some people, but I've been on the sidelines going, that's a broad brush. I can't quite get there. But man, I don't know how you don't go there at this point. So I want to dive into this thing. And it starts with this. And this made news, national news all over the place yesterday, which I try not to talk about the natural national news stuff because it's already out there. And what's the point? But Representative Lee Finke, the woman of the year in Minnesota, if you haven't heard, Representative Lee Finke, a dude, a transgender legislator in our state house, was awarded the Woman of the Year in Minnesota. And if that isn't a disservice to, I don't know, the 3 million actual women in this state, then I don't know what is. But Lee Finke has introduced, and shame on me and shame on others for not noticing this, because this bill, I'm looking at it now, this bill was introduced on February 13th. This bill's been out there for almost 3 months, but it's starting to get traction in the House. And so it's starting to get talked about. And then, like I said, it was all over the media, Fox News, like the big Fox News, not just the local Fox 9 crappy affiliate. And even the big Fox News is becoming pretty crappy at this point when they lose or they dismiss Dan Bongino and Tucker Carlson. But this made the news yesterday, and I have to talk about it. And so, House File 1655. House File 1655 is a bill that refers to human rights acts, our human rights laws in Minnesota. And I've got the bill right here. I'm going to pull this thing up and you can see what this is. This is probably, it's not old news at this point, but I'm going to pull this sucker up. So here's the bill. Lee Finke is the chief author. Look at all of these Democrats that have co authored this ridiculous bill. You can see all these names: Curran, Hollins, Kozlowski, Ryer, Becker, Finn. My goodness. I mean, it's not a surprise. Becker Finn is just a whack job. Jordan. Jordan is the one with the crazy eyes at the Capitol. That just the look in her face makes me go, I don't think there's any cogs turning behind that forehead of hers. Stevenson, Perez Vega, I think is how you say it. Heather Keeler's an author. Frederick Frazier is an author. Purcell, Hemmingson, Yeager, Smith, Fisher, Kraft, Joachim. I don't know if you're represented by any of these people. Odds are you're probably not if you're watching this. But man, if you are, you got to reach out to these people. So I'm going to click into this thing and just show you. Actually, I've got a better way to do this. I'm going to close this down. I'm just going to get right to, here it is. I highlighted it. So this is a portion of the bill here. I just grabbed the most important part. So under this human rights law, right, there's all these definitions on what these things mean. So here is the definition of sexual orientation. So what the whole intent of this law is protecting human rights, right? And so they go through these things. Who are these protected classes, essentially, in Minnesota? And so they talk about sexual orientation and define what sexual orientation is. And the very last sentence of this bill, for as long as this has been state law, the state law has said sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult. And I tell you what, whoever came up with this language when this was originally put in law, I give them props for having the foresight to say, look, if we're going to define sexual orientation, we should make sure to include the fact that we are not talking about pedophiles here. Like you're not a protected class. Pedophiles are not a protected class in Minnesota. Not yet, because this bill, if you're new to reading bills, when you see the strikeout, that means they want to remove that language from state statute. If it's underlined, like you can see below, they want to add that language to state statute. So this bill would give protections and would pave the way for pedophiles to become a protected class under this sexual orientation law. And I see Democrats and the author of the bill, Lee Finke, the dude who won Woman of the Year in Minnesota. That's how crazy it is in Minnesota. They're trying to justify this and saying it doesn't change anything. But obviously, anybody with a ticking brain who does not, it doesn't include that the Jordan gal in the house. If you have a ticking brain, you know, removing this language paves the path for pedophilia to be a protected activity and for pedophiles to be a protected class in Minnesota. That is insane. Like, I haven't read the whole bill, to be perfectly honest, but as you read some of this stuff, like the whole bill, some of the sections I've read, I don't have issues with some of it. But when you include striking out this sentence right here about sexual orientation, not well, this is a good thing today. It says sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult. You strike that out, that paves a very, very dangerous path. I mean, I think the slippery slope thing applies here 100%. So that's sort of exhibit one of today, because it got even crazier at the Capitol on, I think it was Monday night. And that is the Senate. So I'm going to take this sucker off. So let me set the table for everybody. And this is something I don't think you're going to hear much about. I have heard some rumblings about it, but when I went back and actually watched the whole detail, this is way, way more interesting than any media outlet's talking about. And thus it is behind the smokescreen worthy. So the Senate, the Minnesota State Senate, was hearing the Education Omnibus Bill. I believe it's House File 2497. And yes, I said the Senate was hearing House File 2497. And I believe because it was already passed in the House. So the Senate took up the bill. And much to Senator Eric Lucero's credit, he came up with an amendment. And that amendment was pretty simple. I think it was, quite honestly, pretty genius how he just crafted some changes to existing state law to expand protections in our schools from kids from seeing obscene material. And I'll give you a little more explanation behind this, but I did grab a video because I love getting the actual clips. So you don't have to take my word for it. I've got all sorts of videos, probably 6 or 7 today, and I try to trim these things down because I know everybody's attention span can be challenging. But he brought this amendment forward on the Education Omnibus Bill. And typically we're in the minority, like Republicans are in the Senate now. You try to make an amendment to one of these gigantic omnibus bills, especially an amendment that's controversial. They're dead on arrival, right? If they're in the minority, you don't get the votes to pass these amendments. But Eric Lucero brought this amendment forward. And what it did, I'll explain it, then I'll let him explain it. In existing state law, there is a requirement of public schools or schools to ensure children are not being exposed to online obscene content. So what he did was he just expanded that to include, books, magazines, any print material in public schools that would be reasonably perceived as obscene. And so here's Eric Lucero, Senator Eric Lucero, talking about his bill, in his amendment rather, and what it would do. A quick 16 seconds right from his mouth what this amendment is intended to do.
Is in all areas, and I'll read the verbiage. A school library within a school site must restrict all student access to material that is reasonably believed to be obscene or child pornography or material harmful to minors under federal or state law. That's not controversial.
It shouldn't be controversial, not at all. I mean, if we already are saying, hey, in our schools, let's make sure kids don't aren't able to see like pornographic websites. Makes perfect sense. Once upon a time, I would think everybody on planet Earth would agree that that's a good thing, and that's in state law. So, what he's trying to do is expand that to say, look, we shouldn't have books that are obscene, magazines, like, let's just keep, I don't know, porn out of schools. Is that cool? And again, you for the entire history of our country or the world, maybe it could be argued that is a reasonable position. Not today, not today in Minnesota, not this week in Minnesota. But I'm going to kind of lay out how this played out because after Lucero went through and did his whole speech, they went to Senator Aaron May Quaid. And this is what Aaron May Quaid had to say when they've been debating this amendment. Is it worthy? Is it not? Listen to what Aaron May Quaid said.
This amendment would do is it insinuates that there is obscene material in our school libraries, which there is not, Mr. President.
Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear? Is that news to you? There is no obscene materials in our schools. So, like, the videos of kids, some of them Minnesota kids, going viral all across the country, maybe the globe, of kids reading these obscene books that they found in their school. And I've seen one video where the kid he said the librarian even asked him, "Well, would you even like more material like this?" Like, this stuff is getting pushed onto kids in libraries. But Senator Aaron May Quaid has the I don't the balls to say it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. I did a whole video about this. This book right here. This is in Shakopee schools. I found it. It was on the Shakopee Public School Library. You could check it out. This is one of the pictures of the pages. That's in Shakopee schools. That is, I think it was in Afton School District. This book is all over the place. This gender queer book here. There's the cover of the book. This book is in all sorts of Minnesota schools. And it makes you wonder, and again, here's one of the pages. If Aaron May Quaid is saying there is no obscene material in Minnesota schools, while this has been well known that this material is in our schools, is she saying that's not obscene? Maybe. I mean, maybe that's her logic, that something like this it's not obscene. That is perfectly fine for like 13-year-olds to see stuff like this. Or she's just flat out lying, which is very likely as well. So that is a known fact. I mean, you can look it up. And most of these public school libraries at this point, you can go to their websites. You can see what books they have on hand. So I encourage you, if you don't know if that book's in your school or other books, I mean, you can Google. Alpha News has done stories on this. The videos of kids reading these books in front of their school boards. These things, they're out there. Governor DeSantis has talked about it. They're out there. Aaron May Quaid either lying or she thinks something like this is not obscene material for our schools. And I'd love for her to know. Maybe she'll comment. Maybe Aaron May Quaid will see this and feel compelled to explain her position. Is your position, Aaron May Quaid, that this is not obscene? Or are you just lying? I'm kind of curious. So I'm going to keep progressing with this thing. So his amendment was the A-17 amendment. So Aaron May Quaid speaks her piece, and then they go to the author of the bill. And the author of the bill is Senator Kunish, is her name. And this becomes important because when I was watching all this go down, it kind of blows your mind, what they're willing to do. And they don't even hide it. So I've talked about political cover a bunch. We're going to talk about political cover in this thing and expose it because it's like the most obvious example of it probably ever. So they go to the senator, the author of the bill, and check this out before I play this, because this is probably my favorite video out of the half a dozen or so that I'm going to play, because what she does, and I don't want to ruin the video, but they go to the author of the bill, as they often do, to get the last word on one of these amendments. And I just want you to listen to what she says. Now, the Senate has 67 members. They all have election certificates. They all are tasked with representing their districts and voting their values. And they all have free will, right? They can vote yes. They can vote no. They can do whatever they feel is right. But listen to the author of the bill. And this happens all the time. This is not like a one-off thing. But listen to what she says for the final comments before they go to vote.
President, I will accept this amendment. So members, you may vote green.
Oh, you may vote green. They have her approval now. She says, I will approve the amendment. So members, which that's the internal word for senators, you may vote green. Oh, we all have Senator Kunish's permission now to vote green. Like, that's literally the mindset that these people have. They're so drunk on power. She's on the Senate floor saying, you have my blessing. You may do this thing. Like, as if they report to her. Nobody in that room reports to Senator Kunish. Like, nobody at all. They all operate independently, in case you didn't know. So it speaks to their mindset and how high and mighty they believe to be. But underneath that, this is also how they signal to their caucus members, okay, yeah, this is how you should vote now. So it's not like it's all about their ego. This is also how they signal to each other on the floor, okay, caucus, because it's all a big club, right? As I talk about all the time. You have given permission from leadership to go ahead and vote green on this amendment. So let's see, the vote. Okay, so they go to the A17 vote, and I'm just going to jump right to a screenshot of the vote. So this is the vote from Eric Lucero's amendment saying, hey, how about we don't just stop at websites when it comes to protecting children from obscene material? Why don't we expand that to include any sort of resources available in the public school libraries? So now Kunish has given permission. So here's the result of the vote. 60-5. So almost everybody. And I'll tell you what, I got to linger on this thing. If you are represented by one of these 5 wackos, like, I think it's safe to say these 5 are pedophiles. You want pornographic material in our children's schools, even after leadership gave you the blessing to vote yes. These 5 still vote no. Dibble, Fatah, McEwen, Murphy, and Pappas. They all are like, nope, screw it. We're so hardcore against, or so hardcore for pornographic materials in schools. They want kids to be exposed to it. So the amendment passes. Like, amazing. The amendment passes, which never happens. So as I'm watching this, I'm like, that's amazing that they actually got Democrats to agree that, yeah, maybe kids shouldn't see porn in schools. Like, that makes sense. But like I said, political cover, me boy. That is really what this is. This is an opportunity to say, hey, I voted to make sure that pornographic material is kept out of schools. And you don't have to take my word for it, because I'm going to keep playing these videos and show you what happened next. So that's the vote on Eric Lucero's amendment. Take this thing down, because what happens next, and this was, oh man, I'm actually kind of jealous the speed at which things move in the Senate, because they don't have a 24-hour rule for amendments. The House has a 24-hour rule for amendments. On the floor, they're more nimble in the Senate when you don't have these rules like a 24-hour notice before you file an amendment to a bill. So Kunish green lights the amendment, says it's great, it's fine, go ahead and vote green. Within minutes of this, somebody introduces a new amendment, the A54 amendment. And who introduces it? Senator Kunish, the woman who just said, green light, go ahead and vote for Lucero's amendment. So Kunish's amendment, it was labeled the A54 amendment. And I didn't even grab video of them explaining it, because there was like no explanation. There's none. She spoke to it for about 3 seconds and just said, yeah, it just strikes some language from the bill. So, but I'm going to show you video of what happens during the vote. And this is the longest video I cut. And this video is way longer. It took forever for this vote to happen. I think I trimmed it down to about a minute. So hopefully I can keep everybody for a minute, because it's really interesting how this breaks down. So since it's going to play for a minute, let me tee this up. This vote, Senate File 54, the language never was presented to any of the senators. It was a real-time amendment. Normally they, put that stuff out on screen so members can actually read what they're voting on, but they never put it up on the screen as the senators complained about later on in the afternoon. And so what happened was mass confusion, like just mass confusion. So you'll see that in this thing. And I want you to pay attention. As soon as I start this thing, it's going to go all these yes votes, all these Democrats saying yes, they're voting for their Senate ally Kunish and her amendment. And what her amendment does is it strips out the language that Eric Lucero's amendment just put in the bill. But nobody really had a clue what was going on. Of course, the Democrats did, because they outplayed Republicans for like the billionth time. But check this out. You see all these yes votes pop up, and there's like no votes for forever. And I trimmed down this video to make it even shorter. If I had showed it all, it would have been like a 5 minutes of just staring at utter confusion. And then eventually some Republican votes start to trickle in. Some Republicans are voting for this amendment. And again, this vote would strip Eric Lucero's language out of the bill that was just put into the bill. And then I'll show you the final vote here. So you have to see the confusion. The bottom right corner of the screen, you'll see the no votes, and there's 0 no votes for a long time. Then all of a sudden, and even the Republican leadership chimes in at one point and says, hold on, President, we're trying to figure out something here. So Republicans utterly confused on what was going on. But this is the first vote. There ended up being a second one, a little insight there as to what happened afterwards. But this is a vote, again, from Kunish to strip the language from the bill that she just approved in a very pompous fashion.
Seeing none, the secretary will take the roll. Senator Bowden, for those voting under Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report that Senator Dietzig votes aye.
Senator Dietzig votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Jasinski, those voting under Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. One moment, please.
I'm sorry?
One minute, please.
All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There have been 40 ayes and 27 noes.
So 40 people in this amendment vote to support the amendment, which again strips out this language that Lucero just had inserted into the bill. And so that included, I believe it was 6 Republicans even voted to strip out the newly inserted Lucero amendment. And if you notice, I feel a little bad pointing this out, but it's the reality. At the last second, even Eric Lucero changed his vote on that amendment to a yes. So even Eric Lucero, like 15 minutes after his amendment got in the bill, voted to take his amendment out of the bill. So that's the part that no one's going to talk about. Like the radio shows aren't going to talk about that there's utter chaos and minutes of waiting for anybody. Is anybody going to vote no? All these Republicans were standing around going, what is happening? We don't know what's going on around here. And I had to play this too, because, the amendment passed. So now the language is stripped out. And now we have like 6 Republicans who voted to put Lucero's language in, and then they voted to take the language right back out. So of course Republicans wanted like a redo because they were so confused. And I was shocked that this particular senator or any of them actually said this. Like, this should be humiliating. I can't imagine as a legislator, if I really had no idea what was happening, what this vote was about, you don't vote. You just don't vote if you don't know what's happening. But this is how Republicans tried to make their appeal so they could change how they voted.
There seems to be a ton of confusion about this, and most of the people didn't know exactly what they were voting on. Having voted on the prevailing side of that amendment, I move to reconsider.
So Senator Farnsworth says, hey, most of us had no idea what we were voting on. We still voted. We thought we would still vote, but we had no idea what we were doing. And he admitted at the end that I was one of them, because in this procedure, you cannot make a motion to reconsider a vote unless you voted in the affirmative. So obviously, they quickly appointed Farnsworth to say, hey, look, man, you voted affirmative for this thing. You've got to make a motion to reconsider. So again, this is all part of the guts of it that people aren't going to ever hear about, because that's humiliating when even Senator Lucero gets an amendment passed. My gosh, it actually happened. It protected kids from seeing obscene material in schools. 15 minutes later, Lucero votes to strip his own language out of the bill because they didn't know what was going on. So that's just, I find that comical. And to me, the rule of thumb should be, you don't know what you're voting on, how about you just don't vote at all? Because that would be the safer thing to do versus pushing that yes or no button if you don't know what's happening. And it does sound like the fault really lied at the president of the Senate. They didn't get the language up in time, or maybe it was Senate staff. So they really had no clue. But again, don't vote. Don't vote if you don't know what you're voting on. Really just comical and disappointing to see Senator Farnsworth here say, look, we didn't know what was happening. Can we do a redo here? So, so they do it. They do a redo. And I pulled the results here. And of course, what you'll see is here's the redo. So Republicans all voted no. Democrats all voted yes. So to recap this thing, so ultimately the A54 amendment did go through. But to recap this, the very first vote, here's the first vote. Here's the vote for Lucero's good amendment saying, let's protect kids. Let's not let them get exposed to pornographic material or obscene material in our schools. Almost the entire Senate agrees, except for 5 whack jobs who clearly must be pedophiles themselves, I'd imagine. And then the author of the bill pulls a fast one, introduces a new amendment for the S54, as it was called, to say, well, now that she was able to get all of her colleagues, or all of them except 5, to get this political cover. So all of these Democrats with a yes on their name on this screenshot can go back to their districts and say, hey, I voted for an amendment, the A17 amendment from Eric Lucero, that would protect our kids from obscene material in our schools, much like this one. But then it wasn't even an hour later, they went from this vote, that would be the green votes are great votes on this one, to this one, where the green votes are no good. And this is the vote where they stripped the language back out of the bill. So we've got Lee Finke, the woman, the woman of the year, Lee Finke, saying, hey, how about we just start protecting pedophiles? We'll consider them a protected class by stripping this language out of state statute through House File 1655. And then you go over to the Senate, and you've got a well-intentioned senator and Eric Lucero saying, hey, let's just expand this protection and beyond just the internet, and let's make it books and magazines and just materials in our public schools. And initially Democrats agreeing so they could get their cover vote, so they could say, hey, look what I did over here. But ultimately the Democrats in the Senate strip that language out of the bill. Why on earth would you strip that language out of a bill? What are your intentions? They must be nefarious when you have these things going on in the House, protecting pedophiles. In the Senate, they're saying, yeah, we're fine if we have kids see obscene material in our schools. That is craziness. So that's why I'm officially on board. Now, that Democrat politicians, I would say is my line, Democrat politicians, I think they support pedophilia. I really don't see any other way around it, especially here in Minnesota. I guess I won't cast a huge, or paint a huge brush and say everybody in the country, but Minnesota Democrat politicians this week have proven they have no problem with pedophilia. They have none. In fact, they're promoting it. They want it to happen. That's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. I'm going to pop the comments before I get to my final thing, my little clown show of what's going on at the Capitol. I have real footage of Brad Tapke on the floor of the Capitol, and that's how I'm going to part ways with you here. But let's see. And I'm going to scroll through these comments here real quick. Yeah, Tori, it is horrifying. And I don't know how people deny it at this point. When you have these things happening, legislators who have the the force of government behind them. They are lawmakers saying we're going to protect pedophilias by making them a protected class in Minnesota. And then you have the senators saying, no, it's fine. It's fine if kids see this sort of material in our schools. Let's see. Yeah, Kathy K. It's why is this controversial? This should not be controversial at all. But it's just clear that the Democrats have just lost their mind in this state. They've got the governor's mansion, they got the Senate, they got the House, and they're just saying, let's do it all. Let's do it all. Let's advance this crazy agenda, including I didn't even talk about the fact that we're going to a $72 billion budget. When we passed, well, I didn't vote for our budget in 2021, but the legislature passed a budget in 2021 when I was in the House that was like 52 billion. We're going to increase spending 40% this year is what the Democrats are going to do. 40% increase in state government. I doubt your paycheck. Did you get a 40% raise this year? I didn't get a 40% raise. Like, these are increases in spending that people in the private sector, you, me, families, we don't see these sorts of increases in our spending or in our income. But the Democrats don't care. So they're not going to give back the surplus. That's made very obvious because now all the Democrat talking points are saying, yeah, well, you know what? We're going to invest, right? That's their word. We're going to invest in all these other projects and they're ongoing. So they have no intention of ever seeing that $72 billion budget come down. They're going to use the surplus. They're going to jack up taxes, and that thing will only go up. Where you would think in like a real world setting, if you had a short-term surplus, that might mean, even if you planned on spending the whole thing, whether it's your individual household, you get a bonus from work or something. Well, maybe you go out and do something, but you don't lock yourself up in a long-term financial commitment just because you had a short-term windfall. It's idiotic. But the Democrats know, and I know this, and a lot of you know this. They know if they increase the state budget to a $72 billion biennial budget, and let's say the Democrats lose the state house here in 2024, or eventually Democrats lose control over Minnesota state government, which might be really tough to do. But let's say Republicans win. Let's say Republicans clean house in the near future here. Are Republicans really going to reduce spending? Are they going to say, hey, are they going to recognize that we went from 52 billion to 72 billion in a matter of 2 years? We could probably cut that back to 62 billion or 52 billion or 25 billion might be a good number. They know that Republicans, they don't have the balls to do it. They won't. Republicans will never reduce the size of government. They will never do anything like reducing spending in that fashion. So the Democrats know they're just going to bake it in right now because they know it's never going to go anywhere because Republicans they don't have the courage to do anything about it. And of course, if Democrats keep control of the state government, they'll only increase it. So I really needed to hit on that. Sickos, yeah, Chad, it is disgusting. Like, I don't know how you can go back to your district and look at like the parents' faces in your district and feel good about what they did there. Stripping that language out of that bill when it makes perfect sense. It's already applied to the internet. Why not apply it to other media? Clinton, photos from that book have been posted in other Facebook places and the posts have disappeared. Yeah, I've seen that. And I think when Governor DeSantis did a whole press conference, and I think he had images behind him of these sorts of materials that are in schools, and the media like shut down their live coverage because the content was obscene. But it's in our kids' schools. Let's see. Logos, the TV, Disney Inc. has entered the chat. That's, I'm just going to cruise these real quick. What are they missing? Yeah, Lori. So, I mean, this gets bigger, right? When all this story comes out about their 85,000 kids that cross the border illegally that are just missing. The Biden administration, they don't know where they are. And that whistleblower just came out a couple of days ago saying the United States federal government is like complicit in child sex trafficking. That's a big flipping deal. And I hope people pick up on that, and that even every media outlet should be talking about that. But I guarantee if I Googled MSNBC or CNN and looked up HHS whistleblower, there would be nothing about that. So I'm going to wrap up with this because I got another fun little thing. I got footage of the clown show at the Capitol. This is footage from the floor on Monday night that happened. And some of you may not believe me, but here is footage from Monday night's debate in the Minnesota State House. Well, that's a bummer. I think my music didn't play there. but the clown show I'm referring to is the guy who beat me in November. The guy is a total fraud. He will just lie to you and anybody, tell whatever audience he thinks they want to hear. So I can't go without calling this guy out, because check this out. So Brad Tapke is his name. He was the mayor of Shakopee back in, like, I don't know, 2012, 13, 14, 15. And he, here we go. He prided himself and touted himself for having brought Amazon, an Amazon fulfillment center, to Shakopee and all the jobs that were going to come with it. And so Brad Tapke back in 2015, this is what he had to say. Here's April 22nd, 2015. Man, 8 years ago, almost to the day. He says, Shakopee Mayor Brad Tapke said Tuesday, it's an extraordinary project we are really excited about. And it does not take some sort of a super sleuth to go through Brad Tapke's endless tweets and do a search for Amazon and see for years him praising Amazon. And look at Amazon's at job fairs, great people at Amazon. But of course, now Amazon has fallen out of favor with the left, right? They don't like the way that Amazon treats their employees, and they think they need to get involved. So Tabke on Monday night, he says, well, here's a tweet about it. Tabke laments that he wasn't able to stop Amazon from building a warehouse in his district while he was mayor. And Tabke's quote, "We weren't able to keep that from happening." And of course, Amazon employs like 2,000 of his constituents here in Shakopee. So he's taking shots at Amazon about 8 years ago, saying, great opportunity, so excited about it. Now that, it's not politically popular to like Amazon, he says, I tried to stop it when I was mayor, but I couldn't get it done. The truth is, when he was mayor and they were debating whether or not, Amazon's going to come, Brad Tabke voted to give Amazon a $5 million tax break. So for him to say we tried to stop it, I don't think that's how you stop that sort of investment, Brad. I think if you're trying to stop a business from investing in a community, you probably don't give them $5 million tax breaks. Just a hunch. just a hunch. But now he's trying to say he did his best to stop it, but he just couldn't do it. When he voted to give him $5 million in tax breaks, ultimately, and it passed, by the way, it passed 4-1 at our Shakopee City Council. But ultimately, Amazon didn't like the political heat with this tax break. So Amazon declined the $5 million tax break. But it doesn't change the fact that Tabke voted to give them tax incentives, and now 8 years later is trying to make it sound like he's some hard-on Amazon guy. And let me remind people, Brad Tabke, when he was in the House 3 years ago, and 3 years ago to this day, when we were locked down, voted 10 times to keep the state locked down and under emergency powers, and booming to Amazon, right? The actions of state legislatures around the country that kept their states locked down, all they did was give Amazon and companies like Amazon record profits. So for them to come around 3 years later and say, oh, they're such an evil organization, well, you helped them handily throughout the COVID lockdown. So you don't get it both ways. But of course, they try to, and that's why I introduced this with the clown show, because they think nobody's paying attention. They think your memory is about 3 seconds long, so they can tell you something right now and tell you the opposite 4 seconds later, and they think you're stupid enough to believe it. But I trust people are not that stupid. So that's how I wanted to end this tonight. Maybe I'll take a peek at some more comments here. And sorry, they pop in quick, so I'm just going to scroll these suckers. Beth says, thanks for doing this, Eric. Oh, you are welcome. I have been, honestly, this is the third day I've been going, I'm going to do this tonight. I'm going to do this tonight. And I just haven't done it. And honestly, I love doing this because doing the research, cutting the videos. So it's not just about what I'm telling you, it's actually coming right from their mouths and exposing to the maximum level the hypocrisy in the Capitol. Oh yeah, CPL. Our public libraries have some of these books too. They're awful. Yeah, CPL. That's a good organization. You guys should check those guys out. There's that website, www.cplaction, I'm assuming.com. So I'll leave that at that for now. There's going to be, I think I'm going to be doing more of these things because all these omnibus bills are coming up for votes. I'm seeing Republican legislators signal that they have sold their vote, that even they'll be voting for these omnibus bills, omnibus budget bills, which means they're going to be voting for portions of this massive 40% increase. I think Representative Shane Hadella voted for one of these monster omnibus bills a week or so ago. And of course, he even explained, which is just, I guess I appreciate his honesty. He said, "Hey, I got some projects, in this bill." So he voted for it. And that's the sort of behavior that'll get us nowhere if we are trying to kill these omnibus bills, because that's how government grows and balloons in size. But the Democrats know they just need to dole out a little bit of goodies to some of the Republicans, and then they buy their votes. That's how it happens. They buy and sell votes, and Republicans abandon their principles in exchange for being able to say, "But I got this little tiny thing out of it." So I need to leave with this. So I talked to an activist up in St. Cloud a couple days ago, and she asked me to come up and speak, and then I told her I'm happy to do that. And if anybody else, I know a lot of these freedom groups are still all over the place. I'm happy to come speak. But I told her, look, at the end of the day, what you really have to determine, every single activist, every single organization, what you have to determine is, what do you care about more? Do you care about your principles and not compromising? Do you care about what you're passionate about, what you espouse to be passionate about? And delivering results that are geared right around those principles, and not only delivering the results, but doing it in a principled way. Like Shane Nadella might say, well, I got a result out of that. Well, yeah, you got one little thing, and then we grew government by massive amounts. So that was not a principled way to get your objective done. So do you care more about your principles, or do you care more about being liked by politicians? And I can tell you, I don't give a rat's ass about being liked by like known pathological lying politicians. But unfortunately, most people, most organizations, when it really boils down to it, they care more about being liked or even adored by politicians. Where your objective as a political activist ought to be instilling political fear in the eyes of politicians and making them do your bidding, not kissing their butt. So that leads me to this. Of course, if you want to be politically heard, if you're tired of being politically ignored, if you want to be politically respected, remember you must be politically feared. Thanks.